Hi, welcome to Let's Cook, where today we are celebrating President's Day or President's Week because we'll give our retailers a shot there because there's President's Day, but then there's a retail President's Week. And for this, we are doing oysters because did you know in America there are over 100 varieties that are sold in the United States? We have more varieties of oysters being sold in the United States than any other country in the world. And a few interesting facts about oysters. First of all, they, when you harvest your oysters or when you buy your oysters, you should make sure that the store you're buying them from, that they have the oyster tag that certifies that they're from good water, because oysters are bottom feeders and they'll reproduce in polluted waters as well as non-polluted waters, so you want to make sure that they're coming from good waters. The other thing is when you store them, about 12 hours in a refrigerator is the max you want to store them. At 40 degrees, most refrigerators are about 40 degrees, the oyster starts to lose its freshness. It should be really held at about 32, so if you take ice, store them in your refrigerator on ice, it's a good thing to do. Cover with a wet towel. Don't put them in a plastic bag. They'll suffocate. They'll die. When you wash oysters and you scrub them before you open them, make sure that you really sanitize everything well because there's bacteria on the outer shell that's really not good for you. Another thing I found out interesting about oysters is that they're a little confusing. Maybe this is why they're an aphrodisiac, because they start out as a male. Then they decide, oh, I'll be a female, but if I'm in warm water, and then after they decide I'll be a female and they lay their eggs, they go back to being a male. Then the oysters that stay male, they also lay eggs just like a female does. I don't know, no wonder they have this history of being an aphrodisiac, and they've been mentioned in the Bible, and the Romans loved oysters, and they're just a wonderful food, and they're great in American cuisine because they were an integral part of our earlier cuisine. So, shucks, we're doing oysters today on Let's Cook. We're going to take a little break, and then when we come back, I'm going to show you two wonderful, or maybe three, great presentations with oysters today. Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back. Hi, welcome back to Let's Cook, where we are talking about oysters today. But to go with our first oyster dish, we're going to make a delicious cornbread. So, to make our cornbread, it's very simple. I have a little bit of butter here. I'm just going to take this butter right here, and you can do this right in a bowl. You don't even need a mixer. I'm going to take my butter with my sugar, just going to cream this together a little bit. Just making sure that that butter gets nice and soft in there. You don't even have to distribute it real well or get any air in there. You're just going to get this nice and soft in there. Cream that butter with the sugar. Now we'll add our dry ingredients. I have my flour. I have my cornmeal right here. Baking powder. Baking soda. And my salt. I don't even sift these together. All I do with these is I just mix them with the butter and the sugar that I lightly creamed in here. The important thing with this is not to overmix it when you add your wet ingredients. Make a little bit of a well right in the middle there. We add our buttermilk, very important. If you don't have buttermilk, you can use regular milk, but then you're going to have to adjust your thickening, your rising, the agents that allow the cake to rise, which means your baking soda and your baking powder, because the baking soda works with the acid in the buttermilk, so you'd have to adjust. There we are. And we're just going to mix our eggs with our buttermilk here together just till the batter comes together. I don't even pre-break the eggs and mix it in with the buttermilk. I just mix it just till it comes together. Once it comes together like this, that's it. Beautiful. Now, in this pan right here, what I've done is I've rendered a little bit of bacon. And I need the bacon fat in this for my cornbread. So now I have my bacon fat here. Pan is still a little warm. We simply take our batter now, drop this into the warm pan, and we bake this off in a 350-degree oven for roughly 20 to 25 minutes. It's so easily done. So let me go ahead and get this in the oven now, and I already have one done, so I can show you the one I have done here. I need two towels, one to get this one in, and also one to get this one out. Oh, perfect. So, Going to let that start to cook in the oven. We have this one, which is done right here. We're going to let that set up a little bit. All we do is we just go in on the sides here to make sure that it's not sticking. I'm going to get this released from the pan here. It's going to take me a few minutes. We're going to take a little break, and then when we come back, red oyster stew to go with our cornbread. Very American for President's Day. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back to Let's Cook. Oysters. Very American. Very delicious. Very good for you. Very healthy. And did you know that only about 5% of the oysters that are harvested in this country are really tainted? That's what I've read anyway. So, to make our red oyster stew, that was bacon there you just saw there, but to make the red oyster stew, have a little bit of butter in the pan here. I'm taking the bacon that I rendered for my cornbread, and I'm just going to saute this off with a little bit of butter. That's just to give my oyster stew some flavor. Then with the bacon there, I'm just going to put in red oyster stew, a little bit of red onion. So we'll just take our red onion right here. Now the red onion, we need to cut this very fine because this stew is not going to cook a long time at all. So we're just going to take our red onion here, need about that much right there, and we're going to cut this very fine. So just a little bit of finely chopped red onion. You know, when you're chopping like this, the larger pieces always go to the outside. It's a good idea to take it and always bring in those pieces that fall in and do the whole pile at a time, working your way all the way across it. Okay, this is good. Now, this now goes into our pan with our bacon. Now, normally if you make an oyster stew, you don't want any color on it. This, I would like a little bit of color. So to our bacon and onion mixture now here, we're going to take and add just a little bit of flour. This is going to be our thickening agent right here. Add a little bit of flour there, and that's going to make our roux. We need to cook that out just a little bit. Flour contains about 20% moisture. Need to get rid of that. So now we're going to go ahead and add a little bit of our oyster liquor that we got from our oysters. We're going to stir this around. Now, the oyster liquor is actually the juice. Here, see this oyster? I'll bring this oyster right over here. This oyster I have shucked right here. There's juice in the oyster. See that juice? So what we did is we saved all that juice to make our stew with. We stir this around a little bit more of that. Then we're going to go ahead and add our heavy cream to this. Oh. Along with our heavy cream, we need a little bit of heat, a little bit of cayenne there. Now, when you're using cayenne chili, make sure you use a little bit and add a little bit more, and then use a little bit, add a little bit more. If a recipe calls for a certain amount of cayenne, it might be too hot for you. You want to be careful with that. So, all we're going to do with this now is bring this up to a simmer. We're going to watch it. Now, while that comes up to a simmer, let's look at our oysters over here, because these we're just going to go ahead and they're already shucked. All we're going to do is take them out of the shell. So I'm just going to take my oysters right here, take these out of the shell right here. I already drained off the jus. By the way, when you're having oysters, champagne is by far one of the best drinks to have with oysters. I like beer. Some people like vodka. And the reason the vodka or the champagne, the subtlety of the champagne and even the vodka is because the taste doesn't compete with the oysters. Oysters have a very subtle, salty, sweet flavor. So the wine that you're going to use, you really don't want that to compete with them. So we're just going to take our oysters right here, making sure we just joint them from the bottom. And that's the other thing. When you store oysters in a refrigerator, make sure that you store them on ice if possible, sitting. Let me just get a good shell here to show you, where it's sitting like this. Because the oyster will have a tendency in the refrigerator of opening up. You know, opens up, closes. If it's on its side or upside down, it's going to lose all that liquor, that oyster liquor, all that great flavor in there. You don't want it to do that. So, have my oysters right here. We're coming over here. See our stew here, a wonderful stew. And this is a red oyster stew, but it's not overly red. We don't want it to be too overpowering. I need to taste this now. And make sure it's properly seasoned. Oh, You know what's really good about this? The bacon gives it the salt content, so you don't have to, you have the natural salt content of the bacon. However, I'm going to put a little bit more pepper in this. So here we go, a little bit more pepper in here. And I can still taste just a little bit of that flour flavor. So we need to cook that off just a little bit more, and then we're almost ready for our oysters. By the way, another thing. Let's say you buy oysters, and you say, oh, I'll save the shells, I'll scrub them, and I'll use them again. Not a good idea. Get rid of them. You just never know if you got them clean enough, and what nature created in the shell, you cannot recreate. I have another, I just thought of this too, another thing about oysters that you might not know. When oysters lay their eggs, they'll lay over 1 million eggs. And the eggs are so small that 1 million eggs would be about the size of a baby or a child's marble. So think of it, this big right there, that's 1 million oyster eggs. And look what they grow to be. Oh, even though they do get a little confused about who should be laying the eggs. Okay, here we are. Oyster stew is almost done here. Flour flavor should be cooked off. Now is when I put my oysters into this. I gently stir this. I don't leave this now. Need to stay here. We're going to gently serve this. It cooled down our stew so that what? We lost our boil. We're going to let this come back up to a boil. Once it's at a boil, shut it off. The oysters are done. You don't want to overcook them. They're going to be very tough, chewy. They won't be good. To serve this now, have my dish right here. I'm going to take a few scallions now too. Just a few scallions right here. Going to cut these down into very thin slivers. You know, George Washington, when at his house, when the archaeologists, when they went around his house, they found all these oyster shells and crab shells that were buried in his basement in and around his house. He was a big lover of oysters. Here we are, so we add a little bit of scallion to this. This stew is now ready to serve. So to serve this, let's get our ladle here. Going to bring this over here. Going to set this up in a dish right here. Isn't this a great dish? I love this dish. Got this specifically for this. Going to keep it nice and hot. You want it in a dish like this. You don't want it laying out because it won't be hot. So we have our oysters right in there, making sure we get the oysters with the tomatoes. Just fill it to there. And then, of course, remember, we made the cornbread for this too. So we'll just take a nice piece of our cornbread right here. Got a beautiful wedge of our cornbread right here. Beautiful. Serve that right there. Here we have it. Delicious red oyster stew with cornbread. Great holiday fare for President's Day. We're going to take a little break. And then when we come back, I have some more oysters that we're also going to cook, but it won't be a stew. It's Aw Shucks oysters today on Let's Cook. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back to Aw Shucks oysters today on Let's Cook. Oyster salad. Oh, out of this world. First thing we're going to do is we're going to sear our oysters. I have my pan. I'm going to heat up my pan here. We're going to sear these in a safflower, a sunflower, a canola, a corn, a mazola, neutral oil. We don't want a lot of flavor going into these because our dressing is going to make the flavor. I have my oysters right here. What I did is I dried the oysters very well. I'm going to season them now with salt and pepper. Then we're going to take these seasoned oysters, make sure we move them around so they're seasoned on all sides. Drop them into our flour here. You need to make sure those oysters are very dry before they go into the flour. Then we'll take oysters right here. I have my oil heating up here. I need to make sure that the oil's nice and hot before I put these into sear, so just going to dredge these. Now you'll notice with these oysters, the way I opened them, that they stayed totally together. And that's the other thing. These oysters are no longer alive. Once that oxygen hits the shell there, and you open the shell, the oyster dies. it really doesn't survive. And that's one way to test for oysters. Bang the shell. If you hear a hollow sound, discard it. If it's slightly open and you tap it, if it doesn't close right away, get rid of it. Okay, my oil's hot enough now. Just going to shake, always shake off that excess flour. Going to drop these in a pan and let them start to sear. They're going to shrink quite a bit. And we're actually going to undercook these just a little bit, maybe by your standards, because they're going to continue to cook even after I take them out of the pan. But I don't want them dry, but I do want some color on them. So, whoops, drop my oysters in there very quickly. Now the flour is going to help to keep them moist, and it's also going to help them to brown up a little bit too. So we're going to let these brown up. Barely move the pan. If I move the pan too much, I'm releasing heat, they won't be able to brown. Let's go back to the first one I put in here. See how this looks. You see the edges are just starting to curl here. Whoops, move that one over. Just starting to curl here a little bit. Okay, good. This one is starting to curl. Good. This one is starting to curl right here. Beautiful. Okay, great. Now, when you turn these oysters over and you're searing anything like this, when you turn it over to the second side, remember the first side has already started to heat up, which means you don't leave them in as long once you turn them over. If you're out there, and I hope you're watching my show, please count to 15. That was perfect. Now we're going to remove these because now they're perfectly seared. I'm going to put these on a paper towel here just to absorb any of the excess fat that might be coming out of them. Beautiful. See how fast this is? We need the texture, the flavor of the caramelization or the browning of the flour, and the fast cooking, because now the oysters are still nice and moist. Beautiful. Now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make our salad. Now, the first thing that I have right here is I have some very finely chopped brunoise of zucchini right here. Then I have mango. Beautiful mango. Oh, so good. Nice and sweet. We have some tomato here. A little bit of sea salt. Just a little bit right there. Some pepper. A little bit of cayenne pepper. Beautiful. And last but not least, jalapeno. A little bit of jalapeno right there. Ancho is also very nice with this too. A little bit of jalapeno. We're just going to take this now and toss this together. Oh, beautiful. You see the great colors and flavors that we have going on in this? Absolutely gorgeous. Now, we need to make a little dressing to go with this salad as well, to go with our oysters. So, move this out of the way. I'm just going to take a little bit of lemon juice right here. A little bit of lemon juice there. And then a little bit of parsley. And a little bit of olive oil here. Whoa, not that one. This one. This is my very special olive oil. You know why? It's got a spout. Nice spout here. Just take a little bit of this. Drizzle this in because we need the lemon juice to this. And notice my parsley has changed color there. Why? That's because of the acid. I'm just going to make enough dressing right here to coat my salad. So this dressing is now done. We'll just take a little dressing right here. In it goes. Beautiful. We'll go ahead and we'll toss this around. Just toss this around. Oh, this is going to be so good with the oysters. Now, to make the salad, iceberg lettuce. Little iceberg lettuce here. Get rid of that outside there. We're just going to take this, we're just going to chop it down, finely shred it. Gorgeous. You know, I love oysters and I think you will too, especially if you try the salad. A little bit of iceberg lettuce right there. A little bit of our salad with the dressing right here. And last but not least, we have our delicious seared oysters here, just to go right around the salad so you have some delicious crunch, flavor, heat, and of course, that wonderful oyster flavor that can only be created by oysters. Happy President's Day. Thanks for watching Let's Cook. And remember, oysters are great on President's Day. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.